In the autumn of 1887, Claire Mercer arrived at the Madison County Courthouse believing she was finally going to marry the man she had loved for 11 years. She wore a modest blue wool dress she had sewn herself. Inside her small leather bag were her late mother's Bible and the plain gold wedding band she had purchased for Derek Brooks. Derek had told her to meet him at 2 o'clock. After 7 years of engagement and countless delays, he had promised there would be no more waiting. Claire reached the courthouse early. She stood beneath the wooden awning, listening to wagon wheels pass along the muddy Missouri road, and allowed herself to imagine that the hardest years were finally behind her. Then the courthouse doors opened. Derek stepped outside wearing the dark three-piece suit Claire had helped him buy. But he was not alone. Her younger sister, Natalie Mercer, stood beside him in a cream-colored dress. She held a signed marriage certificate in one gloved hand. The other hand rested inside Derek's. On Natalie's finger was their mother's diamond ring. The ring Claire believed was locked inside the chest at the foot of her bed. For several seconds, Claire could not move. Derek stopped when he saw her. Natalie lowered her eyes, but she did not release his hand. Claire looked at the man she had helped rise from a struggling freight merchant to the owner of one of the largest farm supply houses in the county. Then she looked at the sister she had welcomed into her home after their father's death. "How long?" Claire asked. Derek hesitated. 6 months. Claire's fingers tightened around the leather bag containing the ring she had intended to place on his hand. But the secret marriage was not the worst betrayal waiting for her. Before nightfall, Claire would discover that Derek had taken the money she helped him earn, forged her name on a bank note, and claimed the house she believed they shared belonged entirely to his business. By the following morning, Claire Mercer would have one traveling case, an aging horse, and less than $30 to her name. She believed Derek had destroyed her future. She did not yet know that far beyond Missouri, beneath the open Wyoming sky, a lonely cattle baron was about to lose his ranch to a ruthless land scheme. And the woman Derek had cast aside would become the only person capable of uncovering the truth. If you believe kindness should be rewarded, loyalty should be honored, and betrayal should never have the final word, subscribe to the channel and follow Claire as the worst day of her life leads her toward the future she never expected. Claire first met Derek 11 years earlier beside a broken freight wagon. She was 33 and worked as a clerk for a farming cooperative outside Columbia, Missouri. Derek was attempting to deliver sacks of grain and livestock feed when one of his wagon wheels split near the roadside. Rain had begun to fall, and several sacks were already becoming wet. Claire stopped her horse and helped him drag the supplies beneath the shelter of an abandoned shed. Derek had no money to pay the wheelwright who arrived to repair the wagon. Claire paid the charge. She expected nothing in return. Derek insisted on buying her supper when he had the money. Over a simple meal at the town boarding house, he told her about Brooks Farm and livestock supply. The business consisted of one rented storehouse, a single wagon, and more unpaid bills than paying customers. But Derek spoke as though he could already see the company he intended to build. He wanted to supply farmers and ranchers with grain, fencing wire, tools, medicines, and equipment brought in by rail. Derek had ambition. What he lacked was order. His receipts were stuffed into drawers. Customers owed him money he had forgotten to collect. Suppliers had begun refusing him credit because his ledgers were incomplete. Claire offered to help him organize the accounts. One evening became several weeks. Within 6 months, she left her position at the cooperative and began working beside him. Claire created proper ledgers, collected unpaid debts, negotiated longer terms with merchants, and discovered errors that were quietly draining the business. Derek was skilled at winning customers. Claire made certain the promises he gave them could be kept. The company grew. One wagon became 4. The rented storehouse became a large supply building beside the railway depot. Derek began traveling to nearby towns to secure contracts with farmers, cattlemen, and railroad agents. Newspaper articles praised his determination and business sense. Claire's name rarely appeared. She told herself that recognition did not matter. Derek always said none of his success would have been possible without her. At first, Claire believed that was enough. 3 years after they met, Derek proposed. He placed a small diamond ring in her hand and promised they would marry before the following winter. Claire accepted. The winter passed. Derek said the company could not spare him during a major expansion. He asked Claire to wait until spring. Then a railway contract required all their attention. Spring passed as well. Each time Claire raised the subject, Derek gave her another reason to delay. He needed to purchase another wagon. He wanted to open a second storehouse. The business had suffered a poor season. Claire waited because she believed they were building a life together. Then her father became ill. Robert Mercer had raised Claire and Natalie alone after their mother died. Claire began spending her mornings caring for him and her evenings balancing Derek's ledgers. Derek called her devoted. He told others she was the strongest woman he knew. But he rarely visited Robert. There was always a merchant to meet, a shipment to inspect, or a train arriving with goods. Claire made excuses for him. She had become so accustomed to understanding Derek that she no longer noticed how rarely he tried to understand her. Robert died on a quiet Sunday morning with Claire beside him. Derek arrived nearly 2 hours later. He said a railroad agent had demanded an urgent meeting. Claire told him she understood. Natalie returned to Missouri for the funeral. She had spent several years moving between St. Louis, Chicago, and Kansas City, following opportunities and relationships that never lasted. When she arrived, she appeared heartbroken. She cried in Claire's arms and said she regretted not spending more time with their father. Claire did not accuse her. She opened her home to Natalie and invited her to remain as long as she needed. Robert's estate was divided equally between the sisters. Claire used much of her share to settle his final debts and repair the family home before it was sold. Natalie received her portion in cash and railway investments. For several weeks, the sisters seemed close again. They sorted their father's belongings, read old letters, and spoke about their childhood. Claire began to believe their grief had repaired the distance between them. Then Natalie started visiting Derek's supply house. At first, she said she was lonely. She brought Derek food during long workdays and listened eagerly as he spoke about expanding westward. Soon she visited, even when Claire was caring for matters at the family home. Derek enjoyed Natalie's attention. Natalie enjoyed being noticed by a successful man. Claire saw the way they laughed together, but she refused to become suspicious. Natalie was her sister. Derek had been her promised husband for 7 years. Believing they could betray her felt impossible. 6 months after Robert's death, Derek told Claire he was finally ready to marry her. He suggested a simple courthouse ceremony. No guests, no celebration, no more delays. Claire was surprised by his sudden decision, but she was relieved. He selected Thursday, October 22nd, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The night before, Claire pressed her blue wool dress and placed Derek's wedding band beside her mother's Bible. She barely slept. That morning, Derek kissed her forehead before leaving the house. He said he needed to visit the bank and complete several papers before the ceremony. Claire watched him ride away and believed the years of waiting had finally ended. She did not know Natalie had left through the back door before sunrise. She did not know Derek had taken their mother's ring from Claire's bedroom chest. And while Claire was preparing to become Derek's wife, he was already standing before the county clerk, promising himself to her sister. Claire stood on the courthouse steps, looking from Derek to Natalie. Neither moved toward her. "How could you do this?" she asked. Natalie tightened her hand around Derek's arm. Derek glanced at the people passing nearby. "Claire, this was not how we intended you to find out. You intended to hide it." He lowered his voice. "Natalie, and I did not plan for this to happen." Claire looked at her mother's ring on Natalie's finger. "You took that from my bedroom." Natalie finally met her eyes. "I am sorry. You wore our mother's ring to marry the man who promised himself to me." Natalie looked away. Derek stepped closer and told Claire they should discuss the matter privately. Claire opened her leather bag, removed the small box containing his wedding band, and placed it in his hand. There is nothing left to discuss. She walked away before either of them answered. By the time Claire reached the house, shock had turned into suspicion. Her bedroom chest was open. The small box where she kept important papers had been disturbed. Her emergency money was gone. So were several business agreements and copies of the ledgers she had maintained for Derek. Claire went directly to Brooks Farm and Livestock Supply. The clerk behind the counter looked uncomfortable when she entered. Derek had already instructed the staff not to give her access to the office or the company books. Claire demanded to see the bank ledger. The clerk refused. She went to the local bank instead. The manager had known Claire for years, but he would not discuss Derek's accounts. He did confirm that the joint savings account Claire shared with Derek contained less than $10. Most of the money had been withdrawn 3 days earlier. Claire had placed part of her inheritance in that account. She had also deposited years of unpaid wages whenever Derek claimed the business could not afford to pay her properly. Now nearly all of it was gone. Before Claire left the bank, the manager handed her a notice concerning an overdue business note. Her name appeared beneath Derek's as a guarantor. The document carried her signature. Claire had never signed it. The note was secured against future profits from the supply company and property connected to the business. If Derek failed to repay it, the bank could pursue her as well. Claire found him later that afternoon at the supply house. Natalie was not there. Derek closed the office door behind them. "You emptied our savings," Claire said. "The company needed the money. Part of it belonged to me. We built it together. Then why did you take it without telling me?" Derek did not answer. Claire placed the bank note on his desk. "You forged my name." His expression hardened. The business was failing. The bank would not approve the note without another guarantor. "So you used me. I saved everything we built." Claire stared at him. He still believed the company excused every lie. "You married Natalie for her inheritance." Derek leaned back in his chair. "Her investments give the business room to expand west." There it was. Natalie had not only offered him attention, she had offered him money. Claire asked whether he loved her sister. Derek avoided the question. Instead, he told Claire she could keep working for the company. He said her knowledge of the accounts was still valuable. Claire could hardly believe him. She took her mother's Bible, several family photographs, 2 dresses, her coat, and the business papers she had hidden in a sewing basket. She left behind the furniture she had chosen and the room she had cared for. Before leaving, Claire examined the papers she had saved. Several recent payments had been made to a company called Western Frontier Development. The amounts were large, but the descriptions were unclear. There were also freight charges for shipments Claire could not remember receiving. She copied the entries into a small notebook. Then she carried her case to her father's empty house. The property had not yet been sold, but most of the furniture was gone. Claire sat on the floor beside the bedroom window and opened her mother's Bible. A folded piece of paper slipped from between the pages. Her father had written one sentence. "Never confuse being rejected with being worthless." Claire read it until the words blurred. She cried for the years she had given Derek. She cried for the sister who had accepted her kindness and repaid it with betrayal. She cried for the future she had postponed until there seemed to be nothing left of it. But she did not return to Derek. She did not beg Natalie to choose her. She prayed for the strength to leave with her dignity intact. The next morning, Claire visited a solicitor in town. She showed him the forged bank note and the copied ledger entries. He advised her to preserve every letter, receipt, and contract connected to Derek's company. He also warned her that proving forgery could take time. Claire had little money and nowhere permanent to stay. A former school friend had written months earlier about bookkeeping work near Cheyenne. Claire sent a telegram asking whether the position remained open. The reply arrived that afternoon. The position had been filled. Claire read the message twice. Then she bought the least expensive westbound railway ticket she could afford. She had no promise of work, but staying in Missouri meant living beneath Derek's influence while he built a new life with her sister. Claire boarded the train with one case, her mother's Bible, and $27. She watched the town disappear through the carriage window. For 11 years, Derek Brooks had decided when they would marry, where she would work, and which sacrifices were necessary. Now Claire had no plan, but the next choice would belong to her. Several days later, after reaching Wyoming Territory, Claire continued her journey by stagecoach. Cold rain slowed the road as evening approached. Then the driver stopped beside a damaged wagon. An older woman stood alone beside it, struggling to hold frightened horses steady. The stagecoach driver warned that they could not afford a long delay. Claire looked at the woman and remembered how easily others had left her to face trouble alone. She gathered her coat and stepped down. That decision would lead her to Callahan Ridge. The older woman introduced herself as Ruth Callahan. One wheel on her wagon had broken, and one of the horses had injured its leg. The stagecoach driver refused to wait. Claire chose to remain behind. After the coach disappeared, she helped Ruth calm the horses and move the wagon away from the road. They waited until a ranch hand arrived from the nearest settlement. Ruth noticed Claire's traveling case. "You are far from home," she said. "I am looking for work." "What kind?" "I keep accounts." Ruth studied her for a moment. "My brother needs someone who understands ledgers." Claire hesitated. She had learned not to trust promises made by strangers. Ruth seemed to understand. You will not be given anything you do not earn. The following morning, Claire traveled with her to Callahan Ridge. The ranch employed cowboys, stable hands, cooks, drivers, and clerks. Hundreds of cattle moved across its grazing land, and freight wagons carried beef, hides, and supplies between the ranch and the railway. Ruth's younger brother owned it all. Wade Callahan was 57, broad-shouldered, quiet, and cautious. His wife had died 8 years earlier. Since then, he had devoted himself to the ranch and trusted very few people. He was not pleased that Ruth had brought a stranger into his office. "You kept accounts for a supply company?" he asked. "For 11 years. Why did you leave?" Claire met his eyes. The owner became dishonest. Wade placed 3 ledgers before her. "Tell me what is wrong." Claire examined the entries. 2 payments had been recorded under different merchant names, but both were sent to the same freight agent. A cattle shipment had also been charged twice. She pointed to the figures. Someone is hiding withdrawals by dividing them across separate accounts. Wade looked at the pages again. His bookkeeper had failed to notice the pattern. He offered Claire 30 days of work, a room in a small cottage, and regular wages. She accepted. Wade made his rules clear. She could examine approved ledgers, but could not remove them from the office. Claire agreed. "I do not expect trust before I earn it." During her first week, she found repeated errors in wages and supply costs. Several ranch hands had been paid less than the amounts written in the payroll book. Ben Alvarez, Wade's foreman, initially believed Claire was another outsider interfering in ranch affairs. His opinion changed when she corrected his wages and those of several workers. Claire also discovered that the ranch had paid for tools and fencing wire that never arrived. Wade began asking for her opinion before approving new expenses. He remained reserved, but he listened. Claire respected that. Derek had praised her work only when it benefited him. Wade questioned her decisions, then accepted them when the figures proved she was right. The two spent long evenings reviewing ledgers. Claire learned that Wade had once trusted a business partner who stole from the ranch and disappeared. The loss nearly forced him to sell part of his land. Since then, Wade believed caution was the only protection against betrayal. Claire understood him more than she wanted to admit. Wade also learned that Claire had cared for her father and helped build a business she no longer owned. She did not tell him everything about Derek. Not yet. Their friendship grew through simple acts. When winter weather arrived early, Wade left firewood outside Claire's cottage. When he worked late, Claire kept a plate of supper warm for him in the ranch kitchen. Neither spoke of affection. Claire was not ready to trust another man with her future. Wade had not allowed himself to imagine one. Then Claire found the name she had copied from Derek's ledger. Western Frontier Development. The company appeared repeatedly in Callahan Ridge's accounts. It had received payments for freight, fencing materials, and land surveys. Many of the services had never been completed. Claire searched older records. Western Frontier was connected to several men purchasing ranches along a planned railway route. They wanted grazing land, access to water, and control of the routes used to move cattle. Callahan Ridge stood in the center of the territory they wanted. The false charges were weakening the ranch. If Wade fell behind on his debts, Western Frontier could pressure him to sell. Claire then found a letter from Brooks Farm and Livestock Supply. Derek's company had agreed to provide materials to Western Frontier. Natalie's railway investments had given Derek access to businessmen moving west. He had used her inheritance to join their scheme. Claire continued searching until she found something that made her blood run cold. Several false orders carried her initials. The handwriting resembled hers. Derek had copied entries from the ledgers Claire once maintained. If the scheme was exposed, the documents could make it appear that Claire had helped create it. She gathered the letters, orders, and payment records and carried them to Wade's office. He looked up as she entered. "There is something I should have told you before you hired me." Claire explained who Derek was. She told Wade about the engagement, the secret marriage, the stolen money, and the forged bank note. Then she showed him the papers bearing her initials. Wade's expression changed. "Did you know Western Frontier was connected to this ranch before you came here?" "No. You expect me to believe you met Ruth by chance?" "Yes." Wade wanted to trust her, but his former partner had also looked honest. Until he could verify Claire's story, he removed her from the accounts. Claire felt the old wound open again. She had come to him with the truth, and he had answered with suspicion. "I will leave," she said. "You may remain in the cottage until this is settled." I will not stay where my honesty is treated as a favor you may withdraw. Claire packed her case. Before leaving, she placed a report on Wade's desk. It contained every false payment she had found and the steps he needed to protect the ranch. She could have kept the information. Instead, she left him everything. After she was gone, Ben examined old freight receipts. The false orders had been entered weeks before Claire arrived. Ruth sent a telegram to Claire's solicitor in Missouri. His reply confirmed that Claire had reported Derek's forged note before leaving the state. He also sent copies of letters showing that Claire had questioned Western Frontier's payments months earlier. Wade read them in silence. Claire had not come to help Derek. She had been trying to expose him. Wade found her at a railway boarding house in Cheyenne. He did not defend his decision. I was wrong. Claire looked at him carefully. You believed another man's betrayal mattered more than my honesty. Yes. His answer surprised her. Wade asked her to return and lead the investigation. Claire agreed under one condition. No more decisions about my name or my work without speaking to me first. Wade promised. When they returned to the ranch, he apologized in front of Ruth and Ben. From that day forward, Claire was no longer treated as a temporary clerk. She became Wade's partner in protecting Callahan Ridge. Their investigation soon revealed that Derek and Western Frontier planned to force a sale through a county land hearing. And Derek was already traveling west with Natalie beside him. Derek and Natalie arrived at Callahan Ridge 2 days later. Derek wore an expensive dark suit and carried himself as though the ranch already belonged to him. Natalie wore a fashionable traveling dress and their mother's diamond ring. Derek's confidence changed when he saw Claire seated beside Wade. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "My work," Claire replied. Wade introduced her as the person overseeing the ranch investigation. Derek quickly recovered. He explained that Western Frontier wanted to purchase part of Callahan Ridge and build a railway station near its water source. He promised the agreement would bring jobs and growth to the territory. Claire placed several false invoices on the table. Did Western Frontier also pay for supplies that were never delivered? Derek looked at the papers but showed no concern. Business records are often imperfect. These were deliberately altered. Derek blamed careless clerks. Claire then showed him orders carrying her copied initials. His eyes narrowed. He knew she had found more than he expected. Wade ended the meeting and told Derek that no land would be sold until every account had been examined. Later, Derek found Claire alone outside the ranch office. "You have placed yourself in dangerous company," he said. "I could say the same about Natalie." He ignored the insult. Derek offered to return part of Claire's money if she persuaded Wade to accept the sale. Claire kept her expression calm. "You stole my savings, forged my name, and now you are offering to return what already belongs to me. I am offering you a way out. Why did you marry Natalie?" Derek glanced toward the ranch house. "Her inheritance opened doors. Her railway shares introduced me to the right men. And you love her. Natalie enjoys being admired. I needed someone willing to invest." Claire finally heard the truth without any excuses around it. Derek had not chosen Natalie over her. He had chosen Natalie's money. He moved closer. "You were always more useful to me than she is. Help me complete this agreement, and you can return to the company." Claire looked at the man she had once planned to marry. He still believed she wanted a place beside him. "I would rather begin again with nothing." Derek's expression hardened. "If this scheme is investigated, those papers carry your initials. No judge will believe a deserted fiancé over respected businessmen." Claire said nothing. She had written down every word as soon as he began speaking, using a small notebook hidden inside the folds of her skirt. Neither of them noticed Natalie standing near the open window. She had heard enough to understand that Derek had used her. That evening, Natalie searched his traveling case. She found letters between Derek and Western Frontier's directors. One letter described her inheritance as the money needed to secure the Wyoming agreement. Another stated that Derek intended to move farther west after the sale, without his wife. Natalie also found signed instructions allowing him to sell her railway shares. By morning, most of her inheritance would belong to him. She confronted Derek privately. He told her the documents were ordinary business arrangements. When she asked whether he intended to leave her, he accused Claire of turning her against him. Natalie wanted to believe him. Admitting the truth meant admitting that she had destroyed her relationship with Claire for a man who never loved her. That afternoon, she went to Claire's cottage. Claire did not invite her inside. Natalie removed their mother's ring and held it out. I thought he chose me because I was the woman he wanted. Claire accepted the ring. He chose what he believed he could take. Natalie began to cry. I have lost nearly everything. Claire remained calm. You helped him take everything from me. I know. Natalie asked Claire to protect her from the investigation. Claire refused. I will not lie for you. I will not carry the consequences of your choices. Natalie lowered her head. Then what am I supposed to do? Tell the truth. The county land hearing was scheduled for the following morning. Western Frontier needed approval to claim access to the railway route and water rights surrounding Callahan Ridge. Derek planned to use the forged records to blame Claire for the missing money. Natalie possessed letters that could expose him. But speaking against Derek would also reveal her own involvement. That night, Claire prepared the original ledgers, freight receipts, and letters for the hearing. Wade found her working alone. Are you afraid? He asked. Yes. He did not tell her there was nothing to fear. He simply placed his hand beside hers on the table. You will not face him alone. For the first time since leaving Missouri, Claire believed someone's promise. The following morning, Derek entered the territorial courthouse certain that Claire's name would be ruined. He did not know whether Natalie would remain his loyal wife or become the witness who destroyed his plan. The territorial courthouse was crowded when the hearing began. Derek sat beside the directors of Western Frontier. Claire sat with Wade, Ruth, and Ben. The company's attorney spoke first. He claimed Callahan Ridge had unpaid debts and could no longer manage its land responsibly. He presented the false supply orders carrying Claire's initials. According to him, Claire had approved the payments while working for Derek and later fled Missouri when questions were raised. Derek watched her calmly. He expected fear. Claire stood. She placed the original ledgers, freight receipts, and dated letters before the county officials. The records showed that several orders had been created after Derek removed her from the company accounts. Ben testified that the ranch never received the fencing wire, tools, or livestock medicine listed on the invoices. Ruth produced the telegram from Claire's solicitor confirming that Claire had reported Derek's forged bank note before arriving in Wyoming. Claire then showed the officials her small notebook. She had written down Derek's offer to return part of her stolen money if she persuaded Wade to sell. Derek immediately denied making the offer. A bitter woman can write anything she chooses, he said. Claire expected that answer. She presented a letter in Derek's handwriting that used the same words and figures he had mentioned during their conversation. The room grew quiet. Derek accused her of stealing private papers. Then Natalie entered. She carried his traveling case. Derek stood. Sit down, he ordered. Natalie continued toward the officials. She placed the letters she had found on the table. One described her inheritance as the money needed to enter the Western Frontier Agreement. Another gave Derek permission to sell her railway shares without her knowledge. The final letter explained his plan to leave her after Callahan Ridge was acquired. Derek stared at her. You are my wife. Natalie faced him. That did not stop you from using me. She admitted that she had married Derek while he was still promised to Claire. She also admitted that she knew some of her inheritance had been invested in Western Frontier. But she said she did not know he was forging Claire's initials or stealing from Wade's ranch. The county officials compared Derek's letters with the false orders. The handwriting and figures matched. The hearing was suspended. Western Frontier was denied access to Callahan Ridge's water and railway route. The sheriff took possession of the disputed ledgers and contracts. Derek tried to leave, but he was detained for questioning concerning fraud, forgery, and theft. As he passed Claire, he looked at her with anger. You destroyed everything. Claire shook her head. No, Derek. You did. The investigation continued for several months. Western Frontier collapsed after other ranch owners came forward with similar evidence. Derek was convicted of forgery and fraud. Brooks Farm and Livestock Supply was sold to repay its creditors. The forged bank note was removed from Claire's name, and part of her stolen savings was returned. Natalie lost most of her inheritance. She remained in Wyoming and found work at a dressmaker's shop. Claire did not restore their relationship immediately. I forgive you, she told Natalie. But trust must be earned. Natalie accepted that without complaint. Claire remained at Callahan Ridge. Wade offered her a permanent position managing the ranch accounts and a share of the profits she had helped protect. Claire asked an independent solicitor to examine the agreement before she signed it. Wade respected her decision. During the following year, their friendship deepened. They worked together, shared meals, and faced difficult seasons without hiding the truth from each other. Wade began attending church again. Claire helped several widows and abandoned wives learn how to keep their own accounts and protect their property. Wade supported the work, but never tried to control it. Claire understood that he did not value her because she was useful. He valued her because she was honest, capable, and strong. Wade understood that Claire did not need to be rescued. She needed a man who would stand beside her without asking her to surrender herself. One evening, Wade took Claire to a hill overlooking Callahan Ridge. He gave her a simple ring that had belonged to his mother. Before asking her to marry him, he handed her a legal agreement protecting her wages, property, and share of the ranch. Claire looked at him. "Why did you prepare this?" "Because loving me should never cost you your freedom." Derek had asked Claire to trust him while taking everything she owned. Wade offered love without demanding control. Claire accepted his proposal. They married in the small chapel near the ranch. Ruth, Ben, the ranch workers, and several families from the territory attended. Natalie sat quietly among them. The wounds between the sisters had not disappeared, but healing had begun. As Claire stood beside Wade, she remembered the courthouse in Missouri where she once believed her life had ended. Losing Derek had not destroyed her future. It had freed her from a man who wanted the rewards of her loyalty without offering loyalty in return. Claire's kindness had never made her weak. Her faith had not failed her. Her sacrifices had taught her how to recognize the difference between being needed and being valued. Derek chose Natalie for what he could take. Wade chose Claire for who she was. And before Claire chose Wade, she finally chose herself. Sometimes betrayal closes the door we were too loyal to leave. And sometimes the life waiting beyond that door is the one we were meant to find. If Claire's journey reminded you that kindness, faith, resilience, and loyalty are never wasted, subscribe for more powerful stories where betrayal meets justice and broken hearts find a second chance.